What's going on, everybody? It's AG here. We are officially 2 weeks out from week one of the college football season, with week zero getting us started this Saturday. So let's go ahead and start previewing week one. We've got arguably the best slate of games for week one that I've ever seen. Not only Saturday, but you've got games on Thursday, on Friday, on Sunday, on even Monday that are going to have some intriguing implications going forward in the college football playoff race. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to preview all the games that I think are going to be intriguing. We're going to break down those. I'm going to give you my pick. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me if you are new here. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. So diving into Thursday, Boise State, South Florida gets us kicked off at 4:30 p.m. Kind of a weird start time, but 4:30 p.m. Boise State, South Florida. These are two teams that I think are going to have something to say with the G5 spot in the playoff. Boise State obviously made it last year. Now, their do-it-all guy is gone, and Ashton Jeanty, but last year, really good season, only lost to Oregon and Penn State. Not bad losses at all. But can you replicate that kind of production without your best player? Ashton Jeanty, a lot easier said than done as far as replacing him was concerned. And then looking at South Florida 2 years ago, really good year. If you remember, they kind of gave Alabama a little bit of a game. They've still got a lot of those guys on this roster. Byron Brown at quarterback in particular is one I'm really intrigued by. But Alex Golesh, the head coach, has done a pretty good job here. And be curious to see how long he stays at South Florida before he jumps ship and goes to probably a power conference. Looks like Boise is favored by 8.5 right now, or 6.5, 8.5, whatever. So favored by about a touchdown. Now, this being in South Florida kind of changes things for me, because I think really it's kind of a coin flip game anyway. Especially with being without Ashton Jeanty. I'm curious to see how Boise State manages that, because are they going to ask more of their quarterback? Are they going to have a running back try to replicate that production? What are they going to do? As for South Florida, really only one bad loss last year, and that was to Rice. Other than that, they didn't necessarily be competitive in the games, but they didn't lose to anybody bad. So I think I'm going to actually take South Florida here. Boise being favored here, obviously, they're kind of widely heralded as the G5 favorite almost always, but especially being ranked this year. But I like South Florida in this game. Give me South Florida outright in this one. All right, so looking at the next one, there are two other games I want to talk about on Thursday. Nebraska and Cincinnati is the next one. Now, do I think either one of these teams are going to make the playoff? No. But I think both these teams are going to have something to say in their conference title race. Not saying they're going to either one of them make the playoff. Not the playoff. I already said that. Not make their championship. But I think both these teams are good enough to kind of upset some teams in the upper tier. So I have them both not in the bottom tier, but kind of in that middle tier section of each of their respective conferences. Nebraska favored by 7 in this one. Nebraska, I think, has a better chance of being really good this year than Cincinnati. Nebraska having Dylan Raiola at quarterback, having Matt Rule as your head coach. Third year for Matt Rule there, and his third season wherever he's been, Temple, Baylor, always super successful, always breaking 10 wins. So look for that to happen for Nebraska this year. As for Cincinnati, they've got their quarterback back, and the Big 12 kind of wide open. They've got a pretty brutal schedule, though, so I don't know if they're going to be able to necessarily make a run of the Big 12 championship by any means, but I could argue that Cincinnati's probably like a top 40 team in the country. Nebraska trending towards top 25 territory. But I think this will be competitive, especially being in Cincinnati. But overall, I think not Cincinnati. I think Nebraska's offense is a little too much. So give me Nebraska in this one. I would say probably by 7 or more. But Cincinnati, team to watch out for in the Big 12. All right, so one other game on Thursday I want to touch on. Let's see. Where is it? Where'd it go? Miami of Ohio and Wisconsin. So this one is one you'll look at and probably not think, oh yeah, this isn't anything worth watching. But as of right now, Miami of Ohio is actually a team that I have in the college football playoff representing the G5. Now, Wisconsin, I know they've had really good teams in the past, but as of late, even with Luke Fickell coming over, it just hasn't really worked. And I'm kind of shocked there, because Luke Fickell, a couple years ago when Cincinnati made the playoff, you could argue he was a top 5 coach in the country. Really hasn't happened for Wisconsin. So let's look at Wisconsin first off. Look at kind of how they did last year. So end of the year, 5-7, which is not very good. Now, loss wise, I mean, not really just any terrible losses here. Alabama, USC, not bad. Penn State, nothing to hang your head on. Iowa, not a bad loss, but giving up 42 points to Iowa should probably be a fireable offense. Just going to go ahead and say that now. Kept it close with Oregon, lost to Nebraska, Minnesota, which were both good teams last year. But moving over to Miami of Ohio, now ignoring how they did last year, but Miami of Ohio is usually pretty competitive, and they've got a quarterback coming in. You may remember his name, Daquan Finn, originally at Toledo a couple years ago, kind of put Toledo on the map as far as when they were having those back-to-back really good seasons for Jason Candle. Daquan Finn is a good enough player by himself to keep this game competitive. Transferred last year to Baylor, didn't really work out, and he's back now. He's at Miami of Ohio. Now, being in Wisconsin, definitely a tough place to win. Let's see how. Let me go back to Wisconsin's schedule real quick. Look at how they did against kind of the lower schools last year. See, they barely beat Western Michigan and South Dakota. So, betting wise, if Wisconsin's favored by 17.5, I would say Miami is definitely going to cover the spread there. Now, can Miami of Ohio win this game? Yes. Will they win? I probably don't. I don't think so. I think I'm not going to go that far, but I think Miami of Ohio keeps this game really competitive. Don't know if they can beat Wisconsin because the trenches gap between the G5 and the power conferences is just so much, especially in the Big Ten and the SEC. So I think Wisconsin wins it, but I think Miami of Ohio covers the spread. I think they keep it within probably 10 to 14 points. Daquan Finn is good enough to put up some points by himself, but can they stop Wisconsin? That's the big question mark. But give me Wisconsin here, but Miami of Ohio, team to watch out for. I think they'll be in the playoff at the end of the year as a G5 representative. Okay, so moving over to Friday, there was one or two games. All right, here we go. Auburn and Baylor. So this one, two teams that kind of not being the favorites in either one of their conferences, but teams that could be sleepers to make the playoff. Now, I think Baylor definitely has the better chance to make the playoff than Auburn. Benefit here for Baylor. It's a home game, so that's definitely good for them going forward. Auburn is favored right now by 2.5. Let's look at how Auburn did last year. Hasn't really been great for Hugh Freeze. Loss-wise, lost to Alabama, Vanderbilt, Missouri, Georgia, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Cal. So not the greatest losses, especially Cal, Oklahoma. But beat A&M. So, I mean, there's definitely reason for optimism, I would say. They've got the quarterback coming in. What's his name? Quarterback from Oklahoma. Jackson Arnold. They've got Jackson Arnold coming in, so we'll see how that goes. He wasn't great at Oklahoma. But Baylor, kind of a slept-on year last year. Now, they did just lose one of their running backs for the season, Dawson Pendergrass, so we'll see how that affects them. But not a bad year last year whatsoever. Only lost to Iowa State, BYU, Colorado, and Utah. And that was kind of when Utah was actually kind of okay at the beginning of the year. But they've got their backfield back, Robertson and Washington. I think Baylor is going to be pretty good this year. I think they could legitimately win the Big 12 and crack the playoff. So give me Baylor on this one. Definitely covering the spread, that being 2.5. But I think Baylor wins this one outright. I like Baylor in this game. I'm a little skeptical of Auburn. I know they're kind of getting some top 25 buzz, but I really don't get it. Baylor, on the other hand, is slowly trending up for me. Even without Dawson Pendergrass, I think they're going to be fine. So give me Baylor in this one. I think Baylor is in store for a really good season. All right, so there's the one other Friday game I wanted to touch on real quick. Not too much, but Georgia Tech at Colorado. Georgia Tech, I think, is a team that could sneak into the playoff this year with their schedule and with Haynes King and Jamal Haynes back at quarterback and running back. Favored by 3.5. Colorado, how do they respond without Shadur, without Travis Hunter? They've got a pretty good quarterback combo there that they could go either which way. I don't know who the starter is going to be yet. I would assume it's probably going to be Caden Salter from Liberty. If they go there, he's a good player. He was really good at Liberty a couple years ago, but I really like this Georgia Tech team. I think I've got them with like 2 losses right now. So they're going to be in like that top 15-ish by the end of the season, I think. So give me Georgia Tech here to cover the spread. I really like Georgia Tech this year. All right, going on to Saturday. All right, we get started here at 11 a.m. And I really wish this was a night game. I hate that it's the big noon kickoff because we watch film on Saturday, so that sucks. I'm going to have to miss some of this game. But Texas, Ohio State, number one, these are my two teams. So that's already a battle for me. being from Texas and then Ohio State being my other favorite team, it's going to be tough. But both these teams, question marks all across the board. I think Ohio State has more question marks than Texas. We'll start off with Texas, though. Really good year last year and the year before. They've made the semifinals both years, the past 2 seasons. They've been one play away, arguably, from making the college football national championship. But Quinn Ewers is gone. Can you replace Quinn Ewers with Arch Manning? Arch Manning, he did okay in the games he was in last year. I didn't think he did bad. Now, he didn't play the toughest competition. Let's see, so I don't lie. UTSA, UL Monroe, Mississippi State. So not the greatest competition by any means. Now, the good news for Texas is they've got a lot of guys back. They've got, besides Penn State, I would say the best running back room in the country. Their defense was really good last year. They've got a lot of those guys back. Now, they've got to replace skill guys at receiver, at tight end. They brought in some good transfers. I think they're going to help that out. So the question mark is probably going to be Arch Manning. I think he'll be fine, but can those skill pieces help him out enough to kind of get them over the hump? We'll see. They're going to be fine in the long run, but starting off at the Horseshoe is brutal against the defending national champions. But Ohio State, national champs last year, lost almost all of that team. Now, the good news is you have probably the 2 best players in the country, Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, but you've got to replace your quarterback, Will Howard, which he wasn't just a world beater, but still you've got to replace that. You got to replace both your running backs. You've got to replace some receivers and Emeka Ibuka. You've got to replace some guys on defense, in particular their edge rushers, JT Tomalolo and Jack Sawyer are going to be tough to replace. Now, as far as this game is concerned, it's tough going into the Horseshoe, let alone being kind of your first big start probably if you're Arch Manning. This game's a coin flip for me. It looks like Ohio State's favored by 2.5. I really don't know which way to go with this game. Both these teams are going to be in the playoff, I think for sure. But give me Texas in this game just because Julian Sayin, I haven't seen enough from him at Ohio State. And Ohio State just has so much they have to replace. I think they might be some growing pains there. So give me Texas here. I think Texas is going to win this one. Kind of changed my pick there. I've said Ohio State previously, but I think Texas is going to get the job done. So give me Texas. All right, so moving on to the next game on Saturday I want to talk about. Let's see. I can't remember what exactly that was. Let's see. None of those. Here it was. Alabama, Florida State. Now, they've got these spread out pretty good as far as you've got a game in the noon window, game in the 3 o'clock window, and then the night ones. But as far as Alabama, Florida State is concerned, dang it, I just clicked off that. Alabama, Florida State, I can't promise you this is going to be a competitive game because Florida State absolutely sucked last year. But the good news for Florida State is Alabama has a ton of question marks. In particular, at the quarterback position, Jalen Milroe is gone. So how do you replace him? And then Kalen DeBoer, another year in his system, another year for him to kind of work the offseason. Alabama's going to win this game. I'll go ahead and say that. But being at Florida State, it could get a little rowdy. But Florida State, they were just so bad last year. Let's pull up their schedule. Let's see. Yeah, look at this. They beat Cal and Charleston Southern. That's embarrassing for Mike Norvell. For Alabama, they probably should have made the playoff last year. They lost to OU and Vanderbilt, which really, if they could have beat OU, they would have been in. I like Alabama in this game, but I think it's going to be somewhat close. Not 11 points, but within probably 3 touchdowns, within 20. But give me Alabama here. They're just Florida State. I don't know what to expect. One year they should have made the playoff, and then the next year that just happened. So I don't know. Give me Alabama though. All right. As far as the next game on Saturday, I want to look at. We're not going to talk about this one too much, but UTSA A&M is a game you might want to watch at 6 o'clock. I think that'll be a good one. UTSA, another team that could make the G5. Make the playoff as a G5 representative. So that's a game to keep an eye on. A&M is being talked about a lot this year, but Marcel Reed, as good of an athlete as he is, can he throw? That I don't know. All right, LSU Clemson. Let's go ahead and look at this one. This is the next one I want to talk about. Clemson favored by 4 right now. Both these teams in the top 10. Now, Clemson, I think this is Dabo's best team he's had since Trevor Lawrence left. You've got almost this whole roster from last year coming back. Cade Klubnik has started multiple years now. They've got, I think, 5 first-round picks right now, 5 or 6 first-round picks projected next year, which is insane. LSU, though, Garrett Nussmeier can put up some seriously good numbers. Now, the thing about that is it's kind of a different scenario when he gets into the SEC. So he kind of beats up on the crappy teams, and then when you get into the thick of things in the SEC, not so much. Now, Clemson, are they an SEC team? No. But we saw last year against Georgia, week 1, kind of what they did to Clemson. But LSU and Brian Kelly really kind of, I won't say inconsistent. They're consistent as far as getting to 8, 9 wins. But other than that, there's a lot of inconsistency. I mean, you look at that's 2 years ago, my bad. Last year, lost to USC week 1. Now, USC, not a terrible loss, but not the USC of old. Now, I did beat South Carolina, which was a good win. Beat Vanderbilt, which was pretty good last year. Beat Ole Miss. As far as these losses in the SEC, not bad at all. A&M, not terrible. Now, they shouldn't have lost that game. They got lucky with that one. They shouldn't have lost that game. They were absolutely throttling A&M. Alabama, not even close, 42-13. Shouldn't have lost to Florida, probably. I mean, that's a Florida team last year that was good, but they shouldn't be able to play with what LSU's talent has. I think this is pretty much a coin flip game. While I think Clemson is better in the long run, LSU is talented enough to keep this game really competitive. Being in Clemson, though, give me Clemson. I'll say they'll cover the spread right now. I think they'll win by at least a touchdown, but this game should be close. And LSU could realistically win it, but I think Clemson is more seasoned, more experienced, more consistent. LSU, Garrett Nussmeier is just really up and down sometimes, so give me Clemson in that one. I can't remember if there's any more on Saturday I want to look at. I think that might be it. Let's see. Looking like it. Now, this one right here, we won't actually click on this one, but Utah UCLA should be a good game, I think. Looks like Utah favored by 6.5, but Utah, last year, not a very good year. They lost Cam Rising, and it just didn't work for Kyle Whittingham in year 1 in the Big 12, so we'll see how that goes. But UCLA, you've got Nico coming over. I think UCLA actually should be pretty good this year, so I think UCLA actually wins that game. Not saying they're going to make the playoff, but should be more competitive. They're getting hyped up. All right, so moving on to the Sunday slate. 2 games that are definitely worth watching. South Carolina, Virginia Tech. We'll start off with that one. South Carolina favored by 8. Now, I'm a lot higher on South Carolina this year than a lot of people. Being at 13, I think, is way under what they should be ranked. I think I've got them at number 6, I want to say. Now, last year, I mean, you could have made an argument they need to be in the playoff with how it ended up playing out. But they've got, I would argue, the best player in the country, LaNorris Sellers. Maybe not the flashiest, but he can run the ball. He can throw the ball. If I had the first pick in the NFL draft next year, I'd probably take him. So I think they're in store for a really good year. I think they'll make the playoff. As for Virginia Tech, kind of hyped up last offseason. I was high on them in the ACC and then really a letdown. But they still have so many of those guys back from a couple years ago when they kind of got hyped up. Let's pull up their schedule from last year. Not as good as I thought it was going to be. They've got Drones back at quarterback, though, so I think he could kind of get this team over the hump a little bit, and I think this game will be really competitive here. Looks like South Carolina is favored by 8. Mercedes-Benz, so this is a neutral site game, which makes it really intriguing. Give me South Carolina. I think they'll win by probably about 10, but this is going to be a competitive game. Virginia Tech is good. They're not just a pushover. South Carolina, though, I think is just way too talented this year. Virginia Tech, even though I kind of have them as like a top 35-ish team, they're not top 5-ish like South Carolina is. So South Carolina, too good in the long run, but really good quarterback matchup here with Drones and Sellers. All right, so moving on to the next Sunday game, Notre Dame at Miami. This one definitely has playoff implications because right now I only have one of these teams in the playoff. I won't say who that is till we're done. But first off, we'll talk about Notre Dame. Awesome year last year. Way to rebound from a loss to Northern Illinois. Made the national championship. Now, the good news for them is their best player was out during the playoff run, Jeremiah Love. He is back. So you've got arguably the best running back in the country in the backfield for you. Now, the real question mark is who do they replace Riley Leonard with at quarterback? You know they're going to have a good defense. You know they're going to have like a good line and tight end. They're going to have a good run game because they're running back. But at quarterback, can they replace that? Because even though Jeremiah Love was their do-it-all guy, Riley Leonard carried that team in the playoff to the national championship. Not saying he was super flashy, but somehow he got the job done and got them where they needed to be. And it seemed like whenever they needed a big play, he would run, he would throw, he'd do whatever he needed to do to kind of make that play. So I don't know, I'm a little skeptical on Notre Dame this year. I think they're getting a little overrated. As for Miami, number 10 this year, they were really like a loss or two away from making the playoff last year, really stumbled down the stretch. They lost the number one pick in the draft, Cam Ward. But Mario Cristobal has shown he can put together a super talented roster at Miami. Now they bring in Carson Beck from Georgia, who is not the flashiest guy on earth, but all he does is win games. I think Miami's going to be super good this year. I've got them in the college football playoff. I've got them going undefeated in the regular season. I think Miami takes this one, especially being at home at Hard Rock. That stadium's going to be going crazy. I think Miami wins this one. I think it might not even be close because I don't know how good Notre Dame's going to be this year. Give me Miami. Notre Dame being favored by 2.5 doesn't faze me at all. Give me Miami pretty big in this one. Not saying super big, but I'd say at least 10 or more. Give me Miami there. All right, so one more game I want to talk about. That is the Monday night game. North Carolina, TCU. North Carolina, I have absolutely no clue what to expect from North Carolina this year with Bill Belichick going there. I don't know. I don't know what he's doing there. I'm a little questionable on what exactly is going on there. So North Carolina is just a big question mark for me. As for TCU, they're favored by 3 here. I think TCU is kind of Baylor-ish as far as how I would kind of compare them to the rest of the Big 12. I think they're in that upper tier, but really towards the bottom, but definite sleepers. Looking at TCU last year, yeah, there we go, 2024. All right, 9-4, really slept on 9-4 year. Lost to Baylor, who we just talked about, I think is pretty good, but some really bad losses. UCF, Houston, neither team really worth anything, but the good news is they barely lost those. Lost to SMU, which made the playoff, but every other loss really close. Lost to Baylor by 3, Houston by 11, UCF by 1, beat Texas Tech, which was really good last year. Now, there's not any super impressive wins there besides Tech, but still not any bad losses either when you kind of look at how close they were in those games. Now, they had bad losses, but they've got their quarterback back, Josh Hoover. If you remember, it was only a few years ago that TCU made the national championship. Not saying this team's going to, but I think this team definitely going to make some noise in the Big 12. TCU favored by 3. Give me TCU here by more than 3 because North Carolina, I have absolutely no clue what to expect. I don't think they'll be very good this year, but I think that's the last week 1 game. So, yeah, that is my preview for week 1. Like I said, I previewed week 0 a couple days ago. If that's something you might be interested in, go check out my channel. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section as far as what game you are most intrigued for. What are some upsets you think are going to happen in week 1? And just your thoughts in general, let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video. And most importantly, subscribe.